Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. This is Bryan Wright, and today I wanted to talk to you about an important concept within the Quran, and one that can be extremely helpful in both strengthening our faith and working through hardship, particularly in these rough times. Tawakkul. You might already be familiar with this term, as Muslims often use the Arabic phrase Tawakkalna ala Allah, which roughly translates as we have placed our reliance or trust upon God when setting out to complete a task. In Arabic, the word tawakkul comes from the root wakala, which has a variety of meanings. In general, it can mean to give over or surrender something to someone else that you trust. The person that holds that trust, the wakil, is a preserver, a hafid, who is responsible for carrying out a particular task or preserving that which you have given over to them. In Islamic law, this term is often used in the idea of what we call agency. When you give a person permission to handle your affairs, like an attorney or a representative, they become your wakil, or your agent. You trust them to act in your best interest and within the limits that you have placed for them. As a result, the wakil can be held legally responsible if he or she is negligent or transgresses these limits. In the Quran, the term wakil or tawakkul appears about 38 times. Each time the term is used to encourage Muslims to, quote, rely upon, put their trust in, or to leave their affairs to the protection of God. This might encourage an outside observer to think of Muslims as fatalists, that we sit back, relax, and put all of our affairs in the hands of God and wait for Him to sort things out. This could not be further from the truth. In fact, in each instance that we are commanded to perform tawakkul, it always comes in the form of an action. For example, in Surah Al-Ma'idah, chapter 5 of the Quran, we are told that those who do tawakkul are the true believers. This verse comes in the middle of the story of the people of Moses, who, when they had reached the land promised to them by God, they did not want to enter. They feared the tyrannical people who were occupying that space at the time. However, they were encouraged to push forward and that, quote, if you enter, you will be victorious, and rely upon God if you are true believers. This is not a call to give up or wait for God to figure something out. Remember back in the beginning of this video when I mentioned that we often hear other Muslims refer to tawakkul when they're about to set out and do something? That is because this concept of tawakkul through the Quranic verse, although related to the idea of reliance, doesn't mean that it is a one-sided form of reliance. We still have something to do. As Muslims, we are obliged to take the necessary steps for our lives to improve. In the case of the verse that I quoted, that means that the people of Moses should enter the land that God promised them. Should they do so nonchalantly without taking any preparations? Absolutely not. And they should take care of every single element to ensure the success of their ultimate journey. This is all part of a wider concept within Islam called taking reasons, or al-akhdh bil-asbab, and is not limited to the idea of tawakkul. What I wanted to emphasize here was that although as Muslims we are commanded to rely upon God and trust in God, that doesn't mean that we have no role to play or responsibility to carry out. When we see something that could be better or an opportunity that we can take advantage of, it is upon us to get out there and do it. To look at another dimension of tawakkul, let's go to a different verse in Surah Al-Talaq, which is chapter 65, verse number 3, which states, and God will provide for him where he does not expect. And whoever relies, yatawakkal, on God, then he is sufficient for him. Indeed, God will accomplish his purpose, and God has already set for everything a decreed extent. This verse comes at the end of the rules governing divorce. Going through the process of divorce is one of the most difficult moments in anyone's life. It means that the potential of breaking up a family, major life changes are going to happen for both the husband, the wife, and the children if they happen to have any. Divorce, therefore, is a catch-all for moments of hardship. What are we to do when we go through something like this? Listen to the Quran, which says, see the bigger picture and rely upon God. Understand that the hardship that you're facing, no matter how difficult things might appear to be, are all part of a larger process that you can't necessarily comprehend when you're in the middle of the moment. How many times in life have you gone through something you thought was difficult or even pointless at the time, only to realize, sometimes even months later, that it really paid off and that you're a better person for having gone through it? That is why tawakkul, or reliance upon God in hardships, is critically important. In conclusion, the Quran elucidates many dimensions of the concept of tawakkul. Today, we have looked very briefly at two of these. The first is the idea that within the reliance upon God, there is a responsibility for us to push forward and act, without sitting on the sidelines waiting for God's will to be fulfilled. The second is that tawakkul means to look at the bigger picture, to see beyond the circumstances of the moment and find solace in the fact that God is the one in control, exercising his will as he sees fit. Keep this in mind as you watch the news and see the changing circumstances of our world. And remember that no matter how dark and challenging the world can seem, God is always there. Thank you for listening. Stay safe and tawakkalna ala Allah.